When Honeybits was 10 or 11, her school had made a new rule that said students couldn't tie jackets around their waists. If anyone was seen doing that, they could go as far as getting suspended for a day or two. This was all because a boy tied his jacket around his waist and tripped on a rock. But the teacher said that he tripped on the sleeve of his jacket, which is why Honeybits and all the other students hate their teachers and think they should teach them a thing or two. When Pandora was teaching a 10th grade class, she had her laptop connected to a projector for an essay. Pandora started texting with her boyfriend, but didn't realize her texts were showing up on the computer screen. Her boyfriend said he wanted to talk about something, and Pandora said she wanted to see when they could meet his family to talk about getting married. The text message she got back said, "I have found that I prefer your sister and that she likes me. So, we've been fucking for a few weeks. Sorry. But hey, we'll still see each other sometimes for dinner, so that's nice, right?" Pandora didn't realize the entire class was reading the exchange until someone said, "Oh my god, that had to hurt so much. And that timing? Oh, wow, so unfortunate. Miss Brown must be so embarrassed." Pandora was already holding back tears when she looked up at the projector screen, cursed very loudly, and ran out of the room crying.
The worst teacher Ghost Toast ever had would be his reading teacher in 3rd grade. She wouldn't let him get up to go to the bathroom or even sharpen his pencil. She was a fast talker and sometimes he couldn't understand her. So one day he dared to ask her to repeat a question and she yelled, "I already told you what to do, so do it! I don't need to repeat myself, so get to work and stay quiet." So he said, but I need, and she cut him off by saying, "Go to the principal's office." Later that day, when it was time to go home, he accidentally left his book in the classroom. He went back to get it, and when he walked in, she just yelled, "Get your ass out of this room!" Ghost Toast grabbed his book and ran all the way home.
One time in 9th grade, Honeybits got the hiccups in math class. She has unusually loud hiccups, so it was hard to ignore. But that's not why she got detention. Her math teacher had a solution for her little problem. She told Honeybits to go into the hall, hold her ear, and hop on one foot to cure them. She had no idea how it would cure the hiccups, but she did as she said. Little did she know, her fellow students could hear her and were giggling. Her math teacher came out red-faced and angrily gave Honeybits detention for disrupting class, for doing something she told her to do! Gergak was only 4 when his parents hired a maid. She was really good at doing a lot of things, but babysitting wasn't one of them. At the time, Gergak was quite a brat who wouldn't listen to people, especially the maid. One day, he pissed her off so much that she picked him up and dropped him into the washing machine. Then she shut the lid and turned it on. Gergak tried to climb out, but the maid kept shutting the lid. It got to the point where she sat on top of the washer, making sure Gergak couldn't get out. Scared, he screamed and cried, banging on the walls of the washer as hard as he could. In the end, the maid kept him quiet by telling him that she would do it to him again if he ever told his parents. The maid was eventually sent home, but was replaced with an even crazier one.
So one day, Auntie Mations and her friend went to Six Flags. As soon as they walked through the entrance, they ran to the biggest ride where they were the first 2 people in line. At the front was an old man, somewhere in his 50s, so once Animations and her friend were at the front of the line, they asked the man if they could sit in the front of the ride. Gave them a weird stare and asked, "Did you do anything bad to get here?" They said, "No." He then asked, "Did you come here without your boyfriend knowing?" They said, "No." "Did you come without your girlfriend knowing?" They said, "No." She looked over to her friend, who gave him a weird angry stare. He took off his shades, looked at Animations with a sinister look, making her real uncomfortable. He then said, "Well, you came here without me knowing." Animations thought about the first question he'd asked. By the way, her boyfriend knew she was coming. She assumed he was flirting with her, so he suddenly started repeatedly making a smoochy face at her when she wasn't looking. Her friend kicked him in the leg and grabbed her arm. They both ran off, and one of the people behind them at the back of the line reported them to the main entrance. After a few minutes of hanging around, they were kicked out. Apparently the man had personality disorders and it was normal for him to act like that.
A guy from school asked Pandora out on an early morning hike. The guy said he had feelings for her, but she turned him down. The guy responded by asking, "Okay, well, who's going to take care of this?" gesturing to the tent in his pants. Pandora said,
I'm not taking care of that.
So the guy got up from the bench they were sitting on and went into the bushes. A few minutes later, he came back and they left the park, never discussing what those few minutes were for. He bought her McDonald's, then drove her home and pretty much fell off the face of the planet.
When Doopy was little, her parents often dumped her at her grandparents' place for weeks at a time and called it a vacation. One night, while staying there, Doopy was having trouble sleeping, so she started staring into the shadows on the wall to make herself tired. The shadows were of normal stuff, like trees and blinds, but as she was getting sleepy, Doopy saw a shadow that looked like the silhouette of someone tall and thin. She looked over to her window and saw a long, gangly creature with blank, yellow eyes peering in at her. Doopy kicked off the covers and ran out of the room, slamming the door behind her. She bolted downstairs to hide and then spent the rest of the night awake on the couch. She still has no idea what this creature was, but it was enough to stop her staying at her grandparents' house.
When Tolup was 6, he was at a Chinese buffet with his parents. Now they had been there before, so even though the place was huge, Tolup's parents let him go get food by himself. As Tolup was cramming his plate full of sushi, a man smelling of grease walked up to him, took his plate from him and said, "There you are, son. You scared me to death." He took Tolup's hand and led him to the corner of the restaurant. Tolup didn't really understand what was going on, so he just sat down and started munching across the restaurant from his parents. The man got Tolup all the way to the door before his parents saw him. They ran over, took Tolup back, and called the police. It turns out the man was a registered sex offender.
I will never forget when we were in math class and Dagup asked if he could use the toilet, but the teacher wouldn't let him. So he said, "Please, come on, I have to poop. You're not gonna let me poop? You want me to shit myself?" But the teacher still refused to let him. So in response, he went to the teacher's desk, pulled down his pants, and started shaking his bare ass in the teacher's face. And I mean, like really grinding his ass practically on him. That was talked about on the school grounds for ages.
Melissa went with her mom to do some food shopping for Thanksgiving at Walmart. And as usual, the place was packed. They were just about done and looking for dinner rolls when they heard shouting. What they saw was 2 women fighting over a Patti LaBelle sweet potato pie. One woman had her hands on the top and bottom of the pie box, and the other woman had her hands on the sides. Both of them were shouting like their lives depended on this one pie. Finally, the women were asked to leave for disrupting the shoppers.
When Legna's parents were on the verge of splitting up, they fought over everything. The dumbest thing his parents ever fought over was a lemon cake. One day, his dad was cutting himself a piece and began to cut a piece for his mom as well. That was, until she told him not to because she didn't want any. However, his dad insisted that she have a piece. It escalated from there, and within seconds they were screaming at each other. The next day, Legna's mom gave him all the details of the fight in the hopes that he would take her side of the argument. Legna shouted at the top of his lungs, "I don't care! It's a lemon cake!" He swore to himself that if he ever fought over a fucking cake again, he would pick it up, chuck it in the bin, and say, "There, now there's no more cake to argue about." When he decided to say that to them, his mom told him to just shove it in their faces instead. Spincess had a good relationship with a pretty nice guy named Tolup. Tolup was a jokester and loved to pull pranks and go out with his other friends. They had bonded at a magic show, and it's where they had their first date. Over time, they began growing a little distant, so Tolup recommended another date, something they hadn't done in a long time. Time flew by, and the performance ended. Afterwards, Tolup led Spincess up to the stage and held her hand the whole way. When they got up there, he said, "You want to see a magic trick?" Spincess replied, "Yeah, why not?" So Tolup touched his finger to his nose and said, "Poof! You're single!" When Civil Spider was 17, he lost his virginity at a party. It was with his girlfriend, but since it was his first time, Civil Spider had no idea what he was doing and performed terribly. When Civil Spider woke up the next morning, his girlfriend had gotten out of bed before him. He looked around and saw her giving another guy head under a blanket just 5 feet from him. Civil Spider lost his shit and started screaming at both of them. Needless to say, he no longer talks to her. But he heard through the grapevine that she caught a bunch of STDs and had a kid before graduating high school. Sybil Spider definitely dodged a bullet.
One time, Zaraganba was at the gym doing some bench presses. He looked around and noticed a hot girl looking his way. He thought,
Yes, this is my shot.
loaded up the bar with tons of weight. He started lifting, looked over and gave the girl a smile. While he was doing that, he lost focus and got pinned under the heavy bar. He tried and tried, but he just couldn't get back up, so he had to start sliding the plates off the bar. The weight plates fell to the floor with a loud bang. Everyone in the gym looked at him like he was a moron, and the hot girl just stood there laughing at him.
When he was little, Derek was pretending to be a barber and give his plush dog a haircut. He didn't realize the kind of mess he was making until his mum came in and yelled, "Derek, what are you doing in here?" He had just gotten in trouble before for destroying his toys. Luckily, their cat had fur in a similar colour. So, Derek just told his mum that he gave the cat a haircut. At first, she bought it until she took the time to examine the cat. She told him that she found the spot where he cuts the fur, even though the cat was in a different part of the house. Derek still ended up getting grounded for a week.
When Hellbent was a kid, he really wanted several Lego sets. So when he went to visit his grandparents during the summer, he came up with a genius plan to make some money. He decided to let all of the neighborhood kids shoot him with a BB gun for $10 per shot. He would even let them shoot him straight in the balls for the bargain price of $25. He had the sorest balls in the entire world, but it was the most profitable summer of his whole childhood. While Hellbent was scrolling through a particular comedy app one day, he came across a certain comic. It was about a knight sent to slay a dragon, but it turned out that the dragon was more humanoid and lusty than what a typical dragon may look like. He was very confused, yet ashamed when he looked down and saw that he was aroused. Hellbent immediately went to a different app and asked a friend if he ever saw something that gave him a confused boner. His friend was confused and startled, especially when Hellbent showed him the thing in question. Since then, they agreed to never speak of it again.
Derek has had many crazy ex-girlfriends throughout his life, but there's one who really sticks out. A month after breaking up with her, Derek lost his cat. After a month of searching, there was a knock at the door. Derek opened it to find his cat on the doorstep and his ex-girlfriend sprinting away. In addition to having kidnapped his cat, she had painted the cat pink with red letters spelling out, "Real bad choice." That wasn't the only thing she did, either. One day, Derek looked out the window when he saw his ex-girlfriend rubbing her breasts against the window. Although he reported her to the police, nothing ever happened due to lack of evidence. When Zaraganba was in high school, his friend offered him $20 to pretend to be high in class. In order to be more convincing, Zaraganba rubbed some Vicks Vapor Rub into his eyes to irritate them. He then sat in the back row of English class, acting stoned out of his mind. The teacher noticed Zaraganba's bloodshot eyes and strange behavior and sent him straight to the principal's office. He told the principal it was just a prank, but it seems he'd done such a convincing job at acting stoned that the school was forced to call his parents. The things we do for $20.
One day, Zaraganba was sitting in a class with a couple of his friends. They were watching the movie, Rent, and across from Zaraganba and his friends was a kid who everyone knew as the lazy guy. Just then, in the middle of the movie, the kid said, "If two people with AIDS have sex, do the AIDS cancel out, or do they both get double AIDS?" Since then, the kid's title went from lazy guy to the guy who treated AIDS like a math equation.
So when Legna had his first girlfriend, he felt they were perfect for each other. But one day, she just broke up with him. When he asked why, she told him it was because he was allergic to cats. Apparently, the common house cat is her favorite animal. When she left, Legna went through a slew of emotions, mostly anger. Now whenever he goes on a date, he always tells the girl that he's with that he's allergic to cats.
When Spinal Palm was in 7th grade, the majority of his grade despised him because he had autism. They used to bully him relentlessly, but the worst had to be during one day in Spanish class when everyone behind him decided to chuck pencils at his head. When the teacher left the room for a second, Spinal Palm had enough, stood up and kicked his desk. The teacher came back into him yelling at the whole class and sent him to the principal. A few days later, his Spanish class thought it would be funny if they told this one police officer that worked at the school that Spinal Palm threw a desk at the teacher. He ended up getting arrested, going to court, and serving 6 months of probation.
When Honeybits was 6, she went to the fair with her parents. Honeybits was so excited that she wandered off and got lost in the crowd. Her wristband allowed her to play any game and go on any ride, so she decided to roam around and have some fun. When she got tired, she decided to sit down in an area where no one was around. A man dressed in as a fair employee told Honeybits he knew a cool secret game they could play. Honeybits thought this sounded great, so she followed him to a makeshift shack that wasn't decorated like the others. The man then shows her what appeared to be a toy gun. He pointed it at her and said, "See this? Wanna see what he does?" Without thinking, Honeybit said, "Sure." But when she saw him loading the gun with real bullets, she got scared and ran. The creepy man yelled for her to wait, but Honeybits ran into the crowd. She finally found a security guard who brought her back to her family. That night, Honeybits stayed up and watched TV with her parents. An emergency news broadcast came on saying that a local child was missing. The child was last seen at that fair.
Melissa's scariest encounter happened the first time she tried meditating. She was at home alone and decided to try meditating because she was told it was good for the soul. Like a lot of people, she was skeptical, but she tried it anyway. After a few minutes with her eyes closed, she saw a vision so real it terrified her. Everyone she knew, her family, friends, and even her dog, were dying horrifically in front of her eyes. She stood there crying, not able to wake up from the vision. Suddenly, she woke up on the floor with her family standing around shaking her. Needless to say, she was too scared to meditate again after that.
When he was little, James Shark had a babysitter who told him to go to his room and stay there. He obeyed, but after 2 hours he decided to see what she was up to. So James Shark left his room to find his babysitter in the kitchen. She was licking all the dirty dishes and putting them in the cupboards. When she left, James Shark washed all the plates.
So one day Mikhailin went to his ex's house to watch a movie. The movie was about this crazy man who used to kill and torture people to prove his love to a woman. And she was like, I don't know if it's creepy or romantic that someone could actually do that for love. Being a rash person, he immediately said, I tortured someone to prove my love to you. And he just saw her face, and he knew that he completely screwed up the moment.
Hellbent was at a day camp when he was 10. Bunch of kids, including himself, were walking between activities, with counselors leading them. They were passing a big rocky ditch, and for some reason, Hellbent had the strong compulsion to push a fellow camper in. He followed that weird instinct and pushed him in, and the weird thing, Hellbent managed to convince everyone this kid fell. The kid got hurt, and even he believed he fell on his own. To this day, Hellbent is clueless as to what compelled him to do that, or how the fuck he got away with it. But he is generally a nice guy, completely non-violent. Shima used to think that if two people pushed their bellies together, they'd make a baby. So obviously she thought that getting pregnant was inevitable because mummies and daddies always slept in the same bed. So what if their bellies touched while they were sleeping and the next morning the mum became pregnant? Naturally, when her mum told her that people could choose when they wanted to have a baby, she was totally baffled. Pelvises? What is this nonsense?
When he was younger, Zaraganba's family were always out of the house until very late at night, so he would make the most of his time by running around the house completely naked. One night, he was watching anime butt naked and decided to cook himself a snack. He was cooking up a feast in the kitchen with anime blaring loudly on the TV in the next room. Suddenly, he turned around to find his mom, stepdad, uncles, grandpa, and sister were all standing at the doorway with their jaws on the floor at the sight of Zaraganba's naked chef antics. He awkwardly laughed and then ran straight out of the room.
Tolop loves telling little lies to his brother because he is very gullible. One time Tolop told him that boogers were actually dead brain matter. He told him when our brain gets bigger, it sheds its skin, that's what you see coming out of your nose. Tolop's brother thought this was amazing. He asked if eating your own boogers makes you smarter, and Tolop was like, yeah, absolutely. Now Tolop's brother eats 3 square meals of boogers every day.
In 8th grade, Ladybot had a crush on a cute guy who had just broken up with his girlfriend. Valentine's Day was coming up, so Ladybot knew that this was her chance to win him over. She went into his locker and she left a rose, a love poem, and a note telling him to meet her at the bleachers at 4 o'clock. All day Ladybot waited for 4 o'clock to come around, and when the time came, she raced to the bleachers. but she couldn't find her crush anywhere. Instead, she found a note taped to the highest seat. In her crush's handwriting, it said, "Public bathrooms down the street. Just got a new roll of toilet paper. Maybe that will help you dry your tears." Ouch.
Nixium was about 17 when this one happened. He was camping with an old friend from 6th grade when they spotted a wolf den. They checked it out and there were baby wolves inside. They were only about 2 yards from their camping spot, and Nixium's friend said he would give him $5 if he brought one back with them. Nixium agreed and found a little runt who was seemingly protecting the den. He found a small stick nearby and put it between its mouth so it wouldn't bite him. Nixium picked it up and ran when he heard a howl. He stopped running and felt his heart drop. The dumbest thing was that he forgot to hold the stick while running, so the wolf cub had started howling, and Nixium put the cub down and started running back to the camp. Who knows what would have happened if he didn't put the stick in the cub's mouth? He was given $5 for his courage though.
Pandora once got paid to sit on her friend's toilet for 30 minutes while taking a dump. Every day for a month, she made about $145 just from taking a shit. That is, until one day when she overheard her friend's parents talking about how her shit felt different than her friends'. What? One of her friend's parents even said, "Oh, her poop is so soft." After that, Pandora stopped going to her friend's house and is no longer friends with her. What the fuck?
One time, Gurgat worked at an adult video store. His boss emailed him one day, asking him to go to his house and bring him some things. Gurgak thought his boss had been hurt because he told him to go grab some bandages, a bag of pills, and a grocery bag on his stove. Then he went to another address that his boss gave him, which was to another adult video store. When he got there, Gurgak was directed to the VIP room, which is where his boss was. He entered the VIP room and saw a hole on the wall. It turned out that his boss had stuck his dick into the hole, but found out too late that it had been treated by a guy. When he found out, his boss had some kind of reflex, getting himself stuck in the hole. So he told Gurgak to push it out from the other side. Not wanting to touch his boss's dick, he went to his boss's side and pulled instead. It eventually popped out, and while doing so, his boss hurt his dick and told Gurgak to bandage it, which he did. The pills in the bag were Viagra, and the other pills, well, they stopped erections. The grocery bag was full of magazines and some weed, and, well, let's just say this is a job that Gurgak leaves off of his resume. Gooby is quite an anxious person, but at least her way of coping with nerves is fairly healthy. Whenever she is scared or worried, Gooby will start chugging from her water bottle. It's great for making sure that she drinks enough water every day, but the problem is if Gooby gets too stressed, she will drink and drink and drink until she makes herself sick. And there's another drawback to drinking too much. She always needs to pee.
When Mikhailum went to his very first party, his friends peer pressured him into drinking Jack Daniels. Mikhailum took one huge gulp and the room around him started spinning. His cool friend told him the spinning would stop if he kept drinking, so Mikhailum had another and another until pretty soon he was blackout drunk. He doesn't remember the rest of the night, but his friends told him that he got so wasted that he ran outside and approached a tall, hairy man who was walking his dog. Mikhailum hugged the man and said, "Hagrid, oh my god, you are real!" He tried very hard to get the stranger to come in and join the party, but Hagrid graciously declined.
Pringle used to think that there was only one president in the history of ever, and that it was Ronald Reagan. Weirdly enough, he wasn't even alive during his presidency. He just heard him mentioned on the news when he was young, and somehow that meant he was going to be president forever. He later realized the truth because the elections came up and Ronald Reagan wasn't there. Not sure how he believed it for so long, since he was taught about the other presidents in school, but hey, that's Pringle.
I was in the 4th grade and the class had to go to the library. During this time, I had some really good beans the day before. When the class was all gathered up in the library, The beans started coming back in a way, and my stomach was really rumbling. I didn't know if this was either gas or just poo-poo. So when I let out what I thought was possibly poo-poo, it was a really strong fart. Around me, all the kids said, "Ooh, smelly Pringles, ooh!" After that, it was difficult for me to cope with my emotions and embarrassment, and I kind of faded into obscurity. To this day, I still have trouble holding in my gas. Sidious had one of the worst computer teachers ever. Not only was she completely hopeless with computers, but she was also super paranoid. Within every lesson, she thought one of her students were about to assault her. One time, Sidious got up to move his chair and she called the school security on him. She did that hundreds of times throughout the year whenever anyone made a sudden movement. Sidious actually felt bad for the security guards because they'd have to come all the way down to her room every day, sometimes twice a day, just to calm her down. The security guards knew she was being ridiculous and would actually apologize to whichever student was getting in trouble. The worst part is that this paranoid teacher actually took someone to court over her paranoia and won. It's a wonder Sidious learned anything that year.
Melissa was once in the hospital after she had a major car accident. As part of their routine emergency procedures, they had to make sure their patients were not pregnant. Melissa cooperated and was waiting for her results when she heard loud whispers coming from the next room. Suddenly, several voices were shouting, and then she heard a nurse yell, "I win the bet! The bitch isn't pregnant! Pay up!" Apparently, they thought she was pregnant because she had put on a little bit of weight and were taking bets.
Pringle got married when he was in the US Navy. A few weeks after his marriage, his submarine was going out to sea for 2 weeks before his major deployment. Pringle's wife was sending emails to him back and forth until around 3 days before he came back, so he got worried. On the way home, Pringle kept calling his cell phone until a man answered the phone and said, "Quit calling my girlfriend." When Pringle finally got home, his house was emptied. Everything was gone, all the furniture he bought, all the electronics, everything. He talked to his neighbors who showed Pringle who the new man was since she had brought him to his house. Turned out Pringle's wife left him for a heroin junkie. A week later, Pringle had to go to his deployment in the Arctic.